Logan Ellis didn't plan on becoming a hero that morning. He just wanted to get his 5-year-old son to school without the damn truck breaking down again. Rain poured like the sky was punishing the city. The street in front of him was already flooded waist-high, traffic frozen, people shouting, horns blaring. Logan gripped the steering wheel tighter and glanced in the rearview mirror. "You okay back there, Ollie?" Oliver, strapped in his booster seat, gave a nervous nod. "Why's the water so mad, Daddy?" Logan gave him a tight smile. "She's just having a bad day, buddy. We'll get through it." He jammed the door open and stepped out into the cold water, soaked instantly. The old Ford's engine had sputtered its last breath 2 blocks ago. He had no choice but to carry Ollie across to dry ground. As he unbuckled his son, a loud splash to the left caught his attention. A sleek black car had stalled nearby, and the woman inside was struggling to push the door open against the rising water. The moment her door jolted open, she slipped. Without thinking, Logan hoisted Ollie onto his shoulders. "Hold tight," he yelled, then charged through the water toward the woman. She was half submerged, her high heels useless, her designer coat dragging in the water. She looked stunned, her dark hair plastered to her face. Logan reached her just as she tried to stand, slipping again. "I got you," he said, wrapping an arm around her waist, lifting her clear off her feet. She gasped, her arms clinging to him instinctively. My phone's my bag." "Forget it, you need to get out." With Ollie still clinging to his back, Logan carried the woman through the water like she weighed nothing. She was shivering, cursing softly under her breath, but she didn't let go. When they reached the sidewalk, he set her down gently. "You okay?" he asked, brushing wet hair out of his eyes. She nodded, catching her breath. "Yeah, thanks to you." "Daddy, is she a princess?" Oliver asked from his shoulders. The woman let out a breathless laugh and wiped water from her face. "Hardly." "I'm Logan," he said. "That's my son, Oliver. You really shouldn't be out alone in this mess." "I wasn't planning on it. My driver bailed when the water started rising. I thought I could make it." She said that like she was used to people doing what she said. He looked her over her coat alone, probably cost more than his truck. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked. "I was headed downtown, but my phone's dead and the car's not going anywhere." Logan hesitated. He had no business getting involved. He had to drop Ollie off with his sitter before heading to his second job at the hardware store. But she looked so lost for a second, standing there dripping and shivering. "I can give you a ride. Once, get him to his sitter. I'm going that direction anyway." She blinked at him. "You do that?" "Yeah, I mean, you almost drowned. Least I can do." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, I'm Fallon Anderson." Logan helped her into the truck, toweling off the passenger seat with his flannel. He got Oliver settled with a snack in the back and turned the engine, praying it would hold for a few more miles. As they drove through puddles and chaos, Fallon stayed quiet. But she kept sneaking glances at Logan, her eyes lingering a little longer each time. Fallon Anderson never relied on strangers. She ran one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the country, and people usually bent over backward for her. But something about this man soaked to the bone, muscles tense from worry over his kid, still offering help without expecting anything threw her off balance. When he dropped off Oliver with the sitter, a kind older woman in a small townhome, Fallon waited in the truck, watching how gently he kissed his son's forehead and said, "Be good, monkey." Back in the truck, Logan glanced over at her. "You sure you're okay?" "Yeah," she said quietly. "Thanks again. I don't usually get rescued by strangers." He gave a low chuckle. "I don't usually carry women out of flooded streets, first for both of us." She smiled. By the time they reached downtown, the rain had eased. Logan pulled up in front of a sleek high-rise building. not even realizing it was the Anderson Tech headquarters. "This the right place?" he asked. Fallon looked at him, that same stunned expression from earlier flickering in her eyes again. This man who smelled like rain and old leather, who smiled with his whole face, had no idea who she was. "Yeah," she said softly, "this is it." He reached over, pulled open her door. "Take care of yourself, Fallon." She hesitated, then pulled a card out of her coat pocket and handed it to him. "If you ever need anything, call me." He glanced at it. "What's this?" "Just in case." She stepped out onto the curb and turned back one last time. "And thanks again, for everything." He gave her a nod and drove off. Inside the building, Fallon stepped into her private elevator, dripping wet, her assistant staring at her in horror. "Oh my God, Fallon, what happened?" Fallon just smiled. "I got carried away." Logan didn't think he'd ever see her again. He dropped her card on the kitchen counter and forgot about it. But Fallon couldn't stop thinking about him. About the man who didn't recognize her name, who looked at her like a person, not a paycheck. And for the first time in years, she wanted to see someone again without a single agenda. 3 days later, she walked into the hardware store where Logan worked and made his jaw drop. "Fallon." She smiled, wearing jeans and no makeup, looking nothing like the woman he carried through a flood. "You said you owed me lunch," she said, her eyes dancing. "I'm here to collect." Logan stared at Fallon like she'd walked right out of another world, which, judging by the way every head in the hardware store turned when she stepped in, she might as well have. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, setting down the box of cabinet hinges he'd been organizing. She glanced around at the shelves lined with power tools and paint cans, then back at him. "Figured that out when you dropped a whole bag of screws just now." He crouched to pick them up, still eyeing her cautiously. "You came all this way for lunch." "You offered. I'm not the type to let someone break a promise." "I said owed you, didn't say I had time to make good on it today." She folded her arms. "Good thing I brought 2 sandwiches and a stubborn streak then." He raised an eyebrow and she added, "Don't worry. I'll wait outside, you finish up." Logan watched her walk out of the store like she belonged anywhere she decided to be. He finished his shift, clocked out, and found her sitting on the curb, cross-legged, handing half a turkey sandwich to a stray dog. "That one's yours," she said, motioning to the bag beside her. "I didn't know what you liked, so I guessed." He took the sandwich and sat beside her, watching as the dog wandered off, tail wagging. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you." They ate in silence for a few minutes. The air was cool, the sky still gray from the storm earlier in the week. Fallon didn't look like she'd ever sat on concrete in her life, but she didn't complain. "So," Logan said finally, "what made you come back?" She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been in a lot of rooms with people who talk too much and mean too little. You didn't ask for anything. That stuck." He nodded slowly. "I'm not used to being a conversation that sticks." "You should be." He looked at her, really looked. Without the heels or the coat or the chaos, she was still sharp, but there was a softness under it. A kind of quiet she carried like armor. "You always this forward." She shrugged. "I don't like waiting for things I want." He finished the last bite of his sandwich. "You don't even know me." "That's why I'm here, to change that." Logan stood, brushing dust from his jeans. "You're not going to find much excitement in my life, Fallon." "Maybe I'm not looking for excitement." He hesitated, then held out a hand. "Come on, I've got an hour before I pick up Ollie. You want to know me? Walk with me." They strolled through the neighborhood, past chipped fences and narrow porches strung with wind chimes. Fallon didn't flinch when the sidewalk cracked beneath her heels or when a loose dog barked from behind a gate. She asked questions, about Logan's work, his son, the places he'd lived. He answered in pieces, careful not to give too much. When they passed a small community garden, Fallon paused. "You help with this?" "Yeah, Saturdays. Ollie likes pulling carrots out of the dirt." She crouched and ran her hand over the edge of a planter. "You grow food in the middle of the city. That's impressive." He shrugged. "People chip in, we keep it going." She looked over at him. "You make things work, even when it's hard." "Not always. But you try." He didn't respond. They reached his truck, and he leaned against the door. "You're not what I expected either. You're not like the women I usually meet." "That's probably a good thing," she said with a faint smile. He nodded. "I should go get Ollie." Fallon glanced at her watch. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes anyway." She started to turn, then looked back. "I'm not good at waiting either, Logan, so if you're interested, don't make me chase you." He watched her walk away, heels clicking against the pavement, and felt something shift. The next morning, he found a packet sitting on the porch. No note, just a sleek black envelope with his name written in clean, deliberate script. Inside was a pass for two to an art exhibit at the Langston Gallery. One night only. Invitation-only event. He'd never even heard of the place. When he picked up Ollie that afternoon, he asked Mrs. Hargrove if she could stay late. "That fancy lady again?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Logan gave a sheepish nod. "She's got the look of someone who doesn't take no for an answer," she said, amused. "Go on, I'll keep the kid." Logan didn't own a suit, so he wore the best shirt he had and polished his boots until they gleamed. When he arrived at the gallery, Fallon was waiting near the entrance, dressed in navy silk that shimmered faintly under the lights. "You clean up well," she said, eyes sweeping over him. "You didn't say this was a black tie thing." "You didn't ask." Inside, the gallery walls were lined with massive abstract pieces, bold colors and sharp lines that looked expensive enough to make Logan nervous just breathing near them. Fallon moved through the room like she belonged there. People nodded at her, a few paused to talk. Logan noticed how she answered politely but kept her focus on him. "You do this often?" he asked. "Too often, most of it's posturing, but tonight I wanted you here." He studied a painting that looked like someone had thrown buckets of red and gold across a canvas. "This stuff mean anything to you?" "Some of it, mostly like watching how people pretend it does." He laughed, a low, genuine sound. She leaned closer. "You think I'm out of my mind for bringing you here?" He looked around, then back at her. "No, I think you're dangerous." "Why?" "Because I'm starting to want to see what happens next." Her expression softened. "Then don't stop." Later that night, outside the gallery, Fallon stood under the awning while rain started to fall again, gentler this time. "I'm not good at slow," she said. "I'm not good at fast." "So what do we do?" He looked at her for a long moment, then reached for her hand. "We meet in the middle." And for the first time in a long time, Fallon let someone lead. Logan didn't expect to see Fallon again the next morning, but there she was, standing in the back of the community garden with her sleeves rolled up and dirt on her hands. "You're about 20 minutes early for carrot duty," he said, stepping through the gate. She glanced up, brushing hair from her cheek with the back of her wrist. "Figured I'd earn my keep this time." "You don't have to impress me." She held up a crooked radish. "Good, because this one looks like it's judging me." He leaned down beside her, his hands moving with practiced ease in the soil. "You know there are easier ways to get someone's attention than digging in compost." "I've tried easier." She tilted her head, studying him. "Didn't work." He didn't answer, just handed her a small trowel. "You're holding it wrong." She adjusted her grip, following his lead. I'm used to pens, not gardening tools. You can't control everything out here. Plants grow the way they want. Sounds inconvenient. That's kind of the point. They worked in silence for a few moments, the morning sun lifting the edge of the fog. Fallon's nails were ruined, her cuff snagged on a tomato cage, and she still didn't leave. Logan finally glanced over. Why are you really here? She looked at the dirt on her palms. I have a board meeting this afternoon. I don't want to go. Then don't. It doesn't work like that. Why not? Because I built something from nothing, and now it owns me. He leaned back on his heels, so take something back. I wouldn't know where to start. He wiped his hands on his jeans, maybe with breakfast. They walked to the corner diner, the kind with cracked booths and chipped mugs. Logan ordered eggs and toast. Fallon asked for coffee, black, and stared at the menu like it was written in another language. You ever been in a place like this? He asked. My dad used to take me to one when I was a kid, before everything changed. What changed? He left. Logan didn't press. She sipped her coffee like she needed it to hold something back. I used to think if I got successful enough, I could stop people from leaving. He folded his hands around his mug. Did it work? She looked down, not once. Their food arrived, and she picked at the toast. I've done a lot of things right, she said quietly, but I don't know how to be close to people, not without scaring them off. I'm still sitting here. For now. He set his fork down. You don't have to keep proving you're tough. I already know. I'm not trying to be tough. Then, what are you trying to be? She met his eyes, honest. They finished eating, and she paid the bill before he could reach for his wallet. On the way out, she paused in front of a flyer taped to the window. Annual Father and Son Fair, she read. You taking Ollie to this? Not sure yet, tickets aren't free. She glanced at him. You want to go? He shrugged. He'd love it. Then we'll go. I'm inviting myself, unless you have a date already. He gave her a long look. You're serious? I bought muck boots and ruined a manicure for you. I think I've earned a corn dog. That weekend, Logan and Ollie arrived at the fairgrounds just before sunset. Fallon was already there, wearing denim and sneakers, holding 2 cotton candies, and looking completely out of place and perfectly at ease. Dad, she's here, Ollie shouted, racing ahead. Fallon knelt to greet him, handing him one of the cotton candies. I got you pink. Figured blue was too obvious. He giggled, sticky already. Thank you. Logan caught up. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to. They walked through booths lined with games and food trucks, Fallon holding Ollie's hand like it was second nature. She didn't blink when he dragged her to the bounce house or when he asked her to ride the Ferris wheel. At the top, with the city spread below them in twinkling gold, Fallon turned to Logan. You know what scares me more than falling? He looked at her, the wind moving through her hair. What? Liking this. He didn't answer right away. Then maybe you should. She reached for his hand, warm and steady. I'm trying. Later, when Ollie fell asleep in the truck, his face sticky and his arms wrapped around a giant stuffed bear Fallon had won for him, Logan turned to her. You didn't have to come tonight. I know. But you did. I wanted to remember what it felt like to just be, with someone, not for a deal, not for leverage, just because. He didn't say anything, just started driving. But the silence between them wasn't empty, it was full of something real, something growing. Fallon watched him from the passenger seat, the dashboard casting soft light across his face. Can I ask you something? Sure. If I were just some woman you met at a fair, would you still want to see me again? He glanced at her, then back at the road. You are just some woman I met, everything else is noise. Her heart beat faster, not from nerves, but from the terrifying comfort of being seen. For the first time in her life, Fallon wasn't chasing anything. She was choosing it. Fallon stood in front of the mirror, running a hand over the lapel of the tailored charcoal blazer she hadn't worn in over a year. She didn't recognize the woman staring back at her not because of the clothes, but because of the quiet behind her own eyes. She wasn't bracing anymore. She was choosing. Behind her, the door opened. Do you really want to go through with this? Her assistant asked, holding a folder thick with contracts and projections. Fallon turned and nodded once. Yes, and I'll handle the board myself. Are you sure you're walking away from? I know exactly what I'm walking away from, she said, taking the folder, and what I'm walking toward. 2 hours later, in a sleek conference room lined with 10 of the most powerful executives in the tech sector, Fallon placed the folder on the table and met every gaze without flinching. I'm stepping down as CEO, effective immediately, she said. The company will be left in capable hands. My hands are meant elsewhere now. Half the room erupted in questions. She raised a hand and spoke steadily. I built Anderson Tech because I needed power. I mistook that for fulfillment, but I've learned something in the last few weeks. There's more courage in being seen than in being followed. She left the building without turning back. By the time she reached Logan's neighborhood, her shoes were in her hand, and the wind had tangled her hair into loose waves. He was in the driveway, helping Ollie paint a cardboard rocket ship with messy blue brushstrokes. Hey, she said, walking up slowly. Logan looked up, caught off guard. Didn't expect to see you today. She crouched beside Ollie. I had to make a stop first. The boy grinned. We're building a spaceship. Wanna help? She dipped her finger in red paint and tapped the side. Now it's got boosters. Logan handed her a paintbrush silently. She didn't take it. I left the company, she said, eyes locked on his. He straightened slowly. You, what? I resigned. I'm done chasing something that never gave back. I'm not proud of how long it took me to realize that. You're serious? I've never been more. He took a step closer, voice low. Is this about me? It's about me and what I want, and yes, that includes you. He looked down, then back up. You sure this isn't a life of galas and private jets? I've had all that. None of it ever looked like this. She nodded toward the cardboard rocket, or felt like this. Ollie ran inside to wash his hands, leaving them alone in the driveway. Fallon glanced at the sky as the first drops of rain began to fall again. Of course it's raining, she said softly. Logan stepped closer. You really gave it all up. I didn't give anything up. I made room. He stared at her for a long moment, then reached up and gently touched her face, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek. You terrify me, he said. Why? Because I've spent years learning how to survive. You make me want to live. She leaned into his touch. Then don't be afraid. He kissed her there in the middle of the driveway, under the rain, with the scent of fresh paint and wet pavement all around them. No cameras, no contracts, just two people who had nothing left to prove. Later that week, he took her hand as they stood in front of the small white house he'd always thought was temporary. She looked up at it like it was a palace. We can find something bigger, he said, almost apologetic. She shook her head. This is perfect. Inside, Ollie was stacking blocks in the living room, humming to himself. He looked up as they entered. Is she staying for dinner again? Logan glanced at Fallon. If she wants to, he said. Fallon crossed the room and knelt beside him. Only if you're okay sharing your dessert. Ollie considered it, only if it's chocolate. She held out her pinky. Deal. That night, with the table set for 3 and laughter echoing through the small kitchen, Logan found himself leaning in the doorway, watching them. Fallon, barefoot, was helping Ollie pour juice into mismatched glasses. She saw him watching, and her expression softened. You okay? He nodded slowly. I just didn't think this kind of life was meant for me. She crossed the room and took his hand in hers. It is now. The porch light glowed behind them. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and cool. And for the first time in a long time, Logan didn't feel like he was waiting for something to go wrong. He was exactly where he wanted to be. Fallon rested her head against his shoulder, and Ollie called to them from the kitchen. Come on, it's getting cold. Logan smiled. Let's go home, he said, and they walked inside together. Fallon stood behind the counter of the local bookstore, her hair tied back, a navy apron dusted with flour from the morning's baking class next door. The bell above the door jingled, and she looked up, instinctively expecting a delivery. Instead, Logan walked in holding a paper bag and a look of wary curiosity. You're volunteering at a bakery now, he asked, setting the bag down on the counter. No, she said, sliding a tray of bookmarks into their holder. The owner was short-staffed, and I was already here. Helped with scones, they're edible. Barely. He opened the bag and pulled out a coffee. Hazelnut, no sugar, figured it was a safe guess. She took it, surprised. That's dead on. He leaned against the counter, eyeing the scattered books and handwritten signs advertising poetry nights and gardening classes. You've been busy. I like being unpredictable, keeps things interesting. He tilted his head. So that's your secret. Part of it. She came around the counter and nodded toward the back room. Come with me. They stepped into a small alcove where old typewriters lined a shelf and string lights glowed overhead. Fallon reached into a drawer and pulled out a thin envelope. I was saving this for the right time, she said, handing it to him. He opened it and unfolded the paper inside. It was a deed, his name printed clearly at the top. Fallon. It's the old lot behind the garden, the one no one's done anything with in years. I bought it last month. He stared at her stunned. Why? Because you said you wanted to build something permanent, something for the community. I thought you should have the space to do it. He swallowed hard, folding the paper carefully. You didn't have to do this. I know, but I wanted to, not to repay you, not to impress you, just because it matters to you. He looked at her for a long moment, then reached out and gently pulled her closer by the waist. You still scare me, he said. She rested her hands against his chest. Good, that means we're doing it right. They kissed, slow and certain, the kind of kiss that promised more than just affection, it promised time. Later that weekend, Logan stood in front of the empty lot, the deed in one hand and Ollie on his shoulders. Fallon stood beside them, pointing out where the greenhouse could go, where benches might sit under the old oak tree that still stood tall in the corner. It's going to be beautiful, she said. He nodded. Yeah, it already is. Fallon reached for Ollie's hand, and together they mapped out the dream one wooden stake and string at a time. Weeks passed, and the lot transformed. Neighbors came to help. Kids painted murals. Fallon coordinated volunteers, her tablet now filled with blueprints for raised beds and solar panels instead of investor presentations. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Logan stood in front of a small wooden structure with a glass roof. Fallon walked over, brushing sawdust from her arms. You finally finished it, she said, stepping inside. It's not done yet, he replied, holding out a thin wooden sign. She took it, reading the letters carved into the grain. The Anderson and Ellis Community Garden. "You started it," he said. "It should have your name on it." She looked up at him, emotion flickering in her eyes. "You built it." "We both did." They hung the sign together as the first string of lights turned on above them. The garden glowed. That night, under those lights, Logan set a small velvet box on the table in the greenhouse. Fallon's eyes widened. "I didn't get down on one knee," he said. "You'd see that coming a mile away." She opened the box slowly. Inside was a gold ring simple, elegant with a deep green stone in the center. "I know you don't need saving, and you don't need a last name to matter, but I want to build a life with you, not because I have to, because I choose you every day." Fallon reached for his face, her voice unsteady. "You're the only thing I've ever wanted that made me slow down enough to feel everything." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." They turned as Ollie ran into the greenhouse, holding a bouquet of wildflowers and a grin too wide for his face. "Did you do it?" he asked. Fallon laughed. "We did." Logan lifted him up, and they both wrapped their arms around her, the three of them, tangled together in the soft light of something whole. Years later, the garden stood taller than ever. It had expanded into a full community center, with workshops, playgrounds, and a coffee stand named Fallon's Brew. Children ran through rows of sunflowers, and laughter echoed off the greenhouse walls. Inside, Logan taught woodworking to a small group, Ollie, now nearly a teenager, helping him with the tools. Fallon sat under the pergola, her journal open, sketching out plans for a new reading pavilion. A woman passed by and paused. "You're Fallon Ellis." Fallon looked up. "Yes." "The one who used to run Anderson Tech." Fallon smiled, her ring catching the sunlight. "Still run something, just not the same way." The woman nodded, glancing around the thriving garden. "Looks like you made the right choice." Fallon's gaze shifted to Logan, who caught her eye from across the path and gave her the smallest, most honest smile, the kind that said everything without words. She closed her journal, stood, and walked toward the life she'd built not from power or strategy, but from love. And this time, she didn't need to chase anything. She was already home.